Okay, and on to the bottom of page 3 for section 10.3, using the quadratic formula. Still in the application exercises, so you can expect that they're either going to give us a ready-to-go quadratic equation or we'll be able to create one. Let's see what this one says. Number 62, and I apologize for the blurriness on the notes here, but you can follow along in the book on page 624, number 62. The hypotenuse of a right triangle is 6 feet long. One leg is 1 foot shorter than the other. Find the lengths of the legs, round to the nearest tenth of a foot. So deep cleansing breath. Let's read it again. This time we're kind of trying to get a mental picture, maybe even draw what we're reading, and also listening for what they're giving us as well as what they're asking us to find. Hypotenuse of a right triangle is 6 feet long. One leg is 1 foot shorter than the other. Find the lengths of the legs, round to the nearest tenth of a foot. So the goal here is to find the lengths of the legs, and we also need to round to the nearest tenth of a foot. And then they give us some information. So we're bringing to the situation the fact that what we know about right triangles. So I'm going to go ahead and draw it. Anytime that a picture is being described, one of the best things you can do for yourself is draw it out and start putting the information in place, especially if you aren't sure how to start the problem. So when we draw a right triangle, the side that's opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, and they tell us that the hypotenuse is 6 feet long, and we usually call that C in terms of a right triangle, and the legs are A and B. And then it says one leg is 1 foot shorter than the other. So one leg is 1 foot shorter than the other, and I've drawn A to be the shorter one here. So if we call leg B X, then A is going to be X minus 1. And then our goal is to find the lengths of the legs. So we want to find out what A equals, which means we're going to find X minus 1. And we're also going to find out what B equals, which is X. Okay? And then they tell us, that's all they give us. So the other thing we're going to have to bring to the problem is the idea, actually I want to use this part over here. So not only do you want to draw the picture, but you gotta sometimes think about, okay, what have they not given us? What do we know that we can bring to the situation? I call that BYOF, bring your own formula, is the Pythagorean Theorem. And that was something we just covered in 10.1 as a way to use the square root property is how we came up with the how to solve things using the Pythagorean Theorem. Now we're going to be able to use the quadratic formula for that. Pythagorean Theorem says that if you have a right triangle and the legs are A and B and the C is the hypotenuse, then the Pythagorean Theorem says that A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which means in this case our A squared is X plus 1, our B squared, I'm sorry, not X plus 1, X minus 1. Our B squared is X, our B is X, so B squared is going to be X squared. And our C is 6 feet. So our A squared plus B squared equals C squared is going to look like this. X minus 1 quantity squared, that's our A value, plus X squared plus, equals, goodness sakes, equals 6 squared. And now we have a quadratic that we're setting up here. You can see the X squared pieces. We're going to get another X squared piece when we FOIL. It's not set up to standard form yet, so that's the first thing we're going to need to do. So we're going to FOIL and then rearrange. So like terms, move things to one side to get standard form. We want standard form so we can use the quadratic formula. Pull our A, B, and C values. So when we FOIL, X minus 1 quantity squared is going to give us X squared minus 1X minus another 1X is minus 2X. Negative 1 times negative 1 is plus 1. Again, this is something from chapter 6, way back when, X minus 1 quantity squared is literally x minus 1 times x minus 1, first times first, outside times outside, inside times inside, last times last. And the outside-inside pieces are like terms that combine together. X squared is just plus x squared equals 6 squared, which is 36. Like terms, and we get x squared and x squared, that's 2x squared, minus 2x plus 1 equals 36. Go ahead and subtract the 36 from both sides, and we now have 2x squared minus 2x minus 35 equals 0. Now this might be factorable. It possibly could be a perfect square trinomial. It's possible that you could complete the square on it, but we're just going to go ahead and do our quadratic formula. So to get our x, we want to use x is equal to negative b plus or minus big old square root b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing over 2a. And in this case, when we fill all the pieces in, notice I'm writing the formula every time I use it. I'm saying it out loud too, not just for the benefit of the notes, but it helps keep it ingrained in my memory. And we're going to use 2 for our a value. We're going to use negative 2 for our b value. Take that sign with. And we're going to use negative 35 for our c value. And then that should create, we start working this out, simplifying it, negative of a negative 2 should give you positive 2 plus or minus. Under the square root, negative 2 squared is positive 4. And then negative 4 times 2 times negative 35 is going to be a positive 280 that we're going to add to that 4. And the whole thing over 2 times 2, which is 4. Simplify that and you get 284 underneath the radical. 2 plus or minus 280, radical 284. 284 is not a perfect square. It kind of gave us that hint when it said to round to the nearest tenth of a foot. So calculator time here, you're going to do 2 plus the radical 284, and that gives you, and then divide by 4, and that's going to give you 4.713 feet. Rounded is 4.7 feet. When you try to do the minus, the 2 minus, this is way bigger than 2. This is way bigger than 4, so the square root of it is going to be way bigger than 2, so you're going to get a negative. Negative divided by positive is a negative. So when you try to put the minus in, it gets you a negative value, and that just doesn't make sense for the situation. So our answer is going to be the 4.7, approximately 4.7 feet is our x. Now, it's a good thing we have notes over here, because after all that work, it'd be tempting to just say, well, that's the answer. And I was tempted there too. I had circled it, but I remembered I need to look back here. So we needed 2 things, our a value and our b value. Our b value is x, so 4.7 feet. Our a value is 3.7, because it's 4.7 minus 1, so it's 3.7 feet. So there's our 2 answers. So really help yourself out, and when you are doing a story problem or any problem that really is involved in lots of steps, it's easy to get sidetracked or not know when to stop. Easy to get distracted by maybe one of the answers sitting over in that multiple choice on an exam. So highlight for yourself your stopping point, your goal, and that way you know when you truly have got your complete answer. Just take a moment to talk through that with somebody else, note any questions, bring them to class, get a good copy of the notes, and we'll see you on page 4.